Welcome. Hey, everyone. So let's go ahead and get started with your 7-second pitches. And first on my screen is Sarah Later.
Hi, my name is Sarah Later. I'm the founder of The Sustainable Socialite. We curate pre-loved fashion to sell at an affordable price. All of our pieces are unique, vintage, bold, and they're all of high quality.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
Mod Bars.
Hey, so I, along with Joseph, Jeff, and Wyatt, founded Mod Bars, which provides affordable, nutritious, and filling snack bars to people with dietary restrictions.
Beautiful.
Camilo.
Nice to meet you guys.
Hi, my name is Camilo, and my business is Blimp Logistics, and we're trying to provide fast and inexpensive drone delivery services for any business.
Nice. Good timing.
Thanks.
Vitalize.
Hey, my name is Sanket. I'm one of the co-founders of Vitalize, and we are building a mobile app to support the wellness of clinicians.
Also well timed. Nice to meet you.
Jacques.
Hi there. So I'm a co-founder of Circo, and we pioneered an indoor garden that has a high enough yield for the average individual to fully grow and eat only the greens that they themselves have grown.
Nice to meet you.
Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm working on a indoor drone to create virtual tours for real estate photographers.
Nice. Nice to meet you, Josh.
To Ab.
Lucy.
Hi, my name's Lucy, and I'm the founder of Wanderlust Wardrobe, a personal styling service that makes fashion accessible to all.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Lucy.
Harrison.
Hi, my name is Harrison Burke. I run Morning Light Esports. If you're not familiar with what an esports organization does, we do everything a traditional sports organization would do, except in competitive gaming.
Cool.
Doyen.
Hi, my name's Doyen, and I'm the owner and founder of Opalescent Nails. And Opalescent Nails is a custom handmade press-on nail company for the booked, the busy, and the bougie.
Great. Nice to meet you.
Caroline.
Hi, my name is Caroline. I'm the owner and baker of Sweet Caroline. We're a baking business that specializes in custom gluten-free French macarons as well as boutique style cakes.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
And Viraj has just joined us, who is with Sankaf in Vitalize. So he already did your pitch for you, Viraj. And I believe you already know Sarah Harold, who just joined us. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Ab. So good to see you.
It's good to see your face and hear your voice. How are things?
I'm good. I'm good. Where are you?
I'm actually in Maryland right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so normally I'd be in Denver, but my sister just got married, and then her birthday was like a few weeks later, so I decided to just stay around and celebrate with them. But I don't know if any of you guys are also in Maryland right now. It's extremely hot, so trying to celebrate anything and wear a mask outside is just not comfortable. So it didn't work out the way we wanted to.
Yeah, it's really bad. I agree.
Well, I hope everyone is staying inside, staying safe, and thank you guys for the pitches. I feel you can give me a shake of head. I feel like that was probably like the 100th time you guys have probably had to pitch your companies over the past few weeks.
It's good practice for them.
I was going to say all of them came out flawlessly, so kudos to you guys.
As you remember, we require it frequently.
Oh my goodness, yeah. No, we definitely had our pitch nailed by the end of the summer.
This is a great interlude into like, Ab, who are you? Why do we keep seeming to know things?
So I have a slide. Before I go into the slides or anything, I want to make this as relevant as possible. So feel free. The slides are kind of just like a path that we can follow. But if anyone has any specific questions, whether it's related to fundraising, related to our experience at UMD, or anything, feel free to interrupt at any time. I definitely want to make this as relevant and as interactive as possible. But yeah, I can go ahead and share my slides in a second. First, I had to show off my Dingman shirt. This is undoubtedly the most worn shirt that I have out of my entire wardrobe. I'll wear it to the gym and get probably like every other time I go to the gym. So I'll be like, so what is Dingman Fridays? So I don't know if these are still in line or if this is vintage, but I love this shirt, and I'm a huge fan of everything that we accomplished and worked through with Dingman. So Cool. I will go ahead and share my screen if now's the right time, Lottie, for that. Great. Again, interrupt as you guys need to. And yeah, let me know when you guys are able to see my screen. Great. So, and I apologize, my co-founder had intended on joining, but he recently got like a swollen lymph node. So I think he's got the bubonic plague or something. So he had to go to the doctors this morning and wasn't able to attend, but he said hello to everyone. And also after this, I'll go ahead and provide our contact information. So if there's anything on here, anything you guys know that might be relevant or have any questions on anything, we'll know how to get in contact with both of us. But great. So I'll go ahead and get this started. So just to quickly go through what I was planning on talking about, but again, this is free flow and I want this to be as interactive as possible. I wanted to go through just a quick introduction so you guys know who I am and kind of our interactions and affiliations with Maryland, go through a quick timeline and story, and then talk about different fundraising lessons, and then key takeaways. In terms of like the fundraising lessons, the way that I'll put that is basically these are fundraising mistakes that we made. And things that I wish I would have known. I try to frame it at least in things that I would have known prior to entering fundraising or even prior to considering fundraising. I didn't realize how much of what I was doing when laying down the foundations for the company would be relevant towards fundraising years later. So if this might be something that's on your roadmap, definitely would encourage you guys to again ask questions, especially as it relates towards the pre-fundraising preparation. That's technology for you. 1 second, I don't know why it's not working. So I guess I'll present it from here. And not all of the logos showed up, so I'm sorry about that. But to give you guys a quick introduction on myself and my co-founder, David, him and I met as randomly assigned freshman year roommates. So prior to Cambridge getting renovated, we lived in it with no air conditioning and I'm pretty sure asbestos. We both were in Business Society and the Economy, the Scholars Program with Mark Wellman, if you guys are familiar. So that's how we initially met. And we were in a flex triple. So basically a dorm for one person fitting 3 people. So very hot and very uncomfortable, but it enabled him and I to get really close. Him and I he was doing marketing and finance. And at the time I was in bioengineering, switching to electrical engineering, and then also considering making my own major for computational finance. We were kind of in similar classes, but not really at the same time. Got to share a lot of interests, but both of us very clearly had been bit by the entrepreneurial bug growing up. And so we would always talk about problems that we wanted to solve. We were convinced that we were going to make like the biggest like 3 a.m. like food delivery service for college students because we always wanted food at 3 a.m. and we're sick of beefy dough. And so that didn't work out, but especially because we were not necessarily had any implementations of tech. So it kind of just didn't pick up the way that we wanted to. Let me see if I can present this real quick. So we did a handful of things while we were in school. Let's see. Sorry, not the full slide is showing up. But we were all over Dingman. As I had mentioned to Holly and Sarah, I felt like we were in the Dingman Center more than we were in our classes, especially as it came down towards our second year coming into our third year, when we were really getting in the weeds of what we were doing with Curu. And then along with that, we were fortunate enough to be in Startup Shell. I'm not sure if any of you guys are also in Startup Shell, but we actually applied to Startup Shell 3 times. We didn't get in the first 2, and then the third time we ended up getting in. So we were super excited about that and learned a lot from the founders that either had gone through the program before or in the fellowship, or the founders that were in our cohort as well. Along with that, we were a part of Hinman CEOs. So we got to work with James Green and Mike Pratt, and especially as it came down towards us really getting a better idea of what we were doing and where we wanted to take this company. Hinman CEOs was fundamental in helping us really kind of put all those things together. And then, fortunate enough, we were also able to participate in Pitch Dingman in 2017. So that's a little bit about what we did at Maryland. This picture was actually taken in Baltimore. We did an event when the Under Armour facility had just opened. and got to present Curu to, local investors and people that were interested in the startup space in the Maryland area. All right, so that's enough about me. Would love to hear a little bit about you guys as well. So I'd ask this or leave this as like an open question for each of you. Have you fundraised before, or are you planning on fundraising in the future? So I'm not sure, Lottie, how you normally do questions, or if that's kind of up to me to decide, but if anyone would be interested in sharing their experiences or, plans for fundraising, I'd love to hear it.
We often just let them shout. And if they're weirdly quiet for some reason, just start picking on people.
Sounds good. But yeah, feel free. Has anyone fundraised before? I guess we'll start there. And then, yeah, tell me about it, Josh.
Yeah, so I got an angel investor last summer. It was just $50K on a safe note. And it was super helpful because he's like actually invested in another startup shell company. You might have heard of Red Spread, Mackenzie. She's super cool. They got into Y Combinator. He's had a
she was Forbes 30 under 30, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of experience with supporting student startups financially, and he's kind of been like a mentor and investor. And so Paul Mandel was my angel. And then we've got a couple other angels that came in throughout the year. This year, we're planning on doing an official seed round early next year after our Kickstarter. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Congrats.
Thanks.
Anyone else fundraised previously? And then if not, does anyone have any intentions of fundraising either in the near future or have like looked at it as a potential funding source, either for this business or a future business? Yeah, go for it.
Yes to both. I did a friends and family round style of investing, and I found someone who was interested. The one thing that I'll say to all of you guys is, I personally, this was my biggest mistake I feel I've made so far. I gave away too much equity. Make sure you have someone advising you on what amounts of equity to give away for what's prices. And in terms of raising in the future, yeah, after my initial budget runs out, I am going to look towards grants and angels for additional funding.
Sweet. No, congrats. And that's definitely good advice. And again, I'll have my contact information on at the end of this slide, as well as I'll add my LinkedIn, and I'd encourage you guys to connect. And if there's any questions that you guys have, whether it be preparing to open a round, or if you have a term sheet and are curious on how that'll affect your cap table or the amount of equity you're giving up, feel free to ping me on that. Would love to work on that. I've made a ton of mistakes in that area, so I can definitely resonate with that. Anyone else have any thoughts associated with current fundraising or potential fundraising in the future? Cool. All right, well, again, feel free to interrupt if there's any questions that arise. So I'll give a quick timeline. We've kind of been all over the map, and there's been a lot of things that's happened since our time at UMD and Dingman. So we came up with the idea in 2016. The idea was originated because we were actually working on another company before this, and it was called Pop. Essentially what we were trying to do is digitize the receipt. And the summer leading into 2016 summer, we found out that there was another company actually from UMD called One Receipt that was doing it, and they had already done a pretty good job. And so we were like, they're pretty far ahead. We're really not original here. And so that was our first kind of failed idea, where we felt like we just wouldn't be able to pick up the market share. And it was pretty complicated based on just running with legacy POS systems. So we were searching for something else, but not really intensely. We kind of just enjoyed the summer a bit. But coming into our sophomore year, we encountered a problem. David and I were both applying. We were looking at living out of Cambridge because it sucked, and trying to live off campus. And at the time, we had applied for the View, the Varsity, and then Landmark, and then I think one other apartment complex. We applied for a handful, and ended up getting rejected from all of them. And we then had our parents come and apply as co-signers and still got rejected. So we couldn't get approved through our natural credit score. And so both of us had to, in order to get housing, we ended up living at Landmark. I ended up working there, so that helped me get housing there. But David ended up having to pay 2 months worth of rent up front, which he was fortunate enough to be able to do through his Bill Gates scholarship. But from there is kind of where we stumbled on the problem of credit being a barrier. And specifically, we thought, students hadn't had enough face time with credit. And we actually, while doing research, found out that in 2009, there was an act passed called the CARD Act, which prevented banks and financial institutions from going on college campuses and advertising financial products. And so that was great because you couldn't have Bank of America or Chase say like, hey, sign up for this, credit card and we'll give you a $10 Domino's coupon. But it also had a negative implication. The average age of people establishing their credit went from 18 to 22 in just 9 years. So that lack of face time, we thought that that's where we originally were like, we're going to try and solve this. So coming into our 2016 to 2017, that's when we participated in Terp Startup. We were working with another technical co-founder at the time that we're no longer working with. But we went through the summer, helped us really try and understand our value proposition. I think that was the first time that we made a pitch deck. And it was brutal. It was really long. We went through every single feature that we wanted to have on the application. I mean, it was terrible, but it's also really fun to like go back and look at it. This after Terp Startup finished, we actually ended up spending the rest of the summer in Silicon Valley. We used some of our grant money to get an Airbnb RV out there. And the purpose of doing that was really to just kind of immerse ourselves in that environment. We also had done a trip out there with Mark Wellman. And so we wanted to reconnect with Greg Croft and a few of the investors that we had met out there to see if this was a fundable idea, which at the time and where we were at with it, it absolutely wasn't. Coming into 2017, in 2016, late 2016, we did the Pitch Dingman semifinals. And then coming from 2016 to 2017, we were working on setting ourselves up for doing the Pitch Dingman finals. Transparently, we had no product. We had very limited traction. We were just building a wait list, and we weren't making any revenue. And we were competing against companies like, I forget the names, like Course Hunter and Gravity Tails that were all in market that had revenue. So I think it was like January, February of 2017, we were talking to our assigned mentor for it, Bob London. And we were like, I don't think we're going to do the competition. We were like trying to figure out how we could, get traction in a few months without having a product outside of doing our wait list. And it seemed like it was going to be nearly impossible for us to start generating revenue, or at least make meaningful steps just to present our company there. So that was where we originally had intended on doing. But there was some time in between prior to making the commitment of not doing the competition where we were like, you know what, we're actually going to, like, we were falling in love with the problem that we were trying to solve, and decided to, we essentially stopped going to all of our classes that didn't require attendance, and started working on this almost basically at a full-time capacity. We just kind of started doing as much research as we could. We started talking to a ton of students. We became certified credit score counselors and credit repair agents, so we better understood the credit market. We also started just getting in contact with as many people as we could to do the research that we wanted, to just help us better understand our value proposition as well as the problem that we were trying to solve and our target market, which we thought were core parts of not only the Pitch Dingman competition, but for us to really make a leap and pursue this full time in the way that we wanted to. So in that time, we ended up going forward and participating in the Pitch Dingman competition, which around the same time as well, we also got into our first accelerator program, which was Queen City FinTech based in Charlotte, North Carolina. So that was kind of the traction that we were going to present at the competition. We had really no expectations of how it was going to go. We were just really excited to participate. All of our friends and our family, that was the first time that they had seen us pitch the business. And so we ended up participating and we're fortunate enough to come out first place. And then from there, we finished out our semester at Maryland. The tail end of it, we were doing remote, and then ended up starting our Queen City FinTech accelerator program. So that was kind of our first outside institutional capital, outside of like the grants and funding that we had gotten through various Maryland programs. And around that, after that semester, both David and I dropped out of school to pursue Curu full time. So since 2017, him and I have been working on the company full time, which has been for us a great decision, but it's not something that I would advocate for anyone. Coming into 2018, we ended up launching our first iOS application and web application. And then we did a small family and friend round. We raised around like $110,000. Our network was very limited. So the people that could invest in it, they were basically only able to write, small like $10,000, $15,000 checks. And so we really exhausted our network, seeing if people would be interested in investing in this. And we got a ton of no's, but it also was the first time that we asked people for money and learned a lot from that process, which I can go into in a little bit. Along with that, in the tail end of 2018, we ended up doing another accelerator. At that time, we were also building our team. So we brought on this awesome designer who obviously did not design these slides because they're not designed well. But we had an awesome designer, and we brought on a really skilled CTO who had a master's in machine learning. And so this accelerator that we were doing was really focused on helping us raise money as well as helping us build out our AI infrastructure. So coming into 2019, we were kind of trying to figure out what we wanted to do. We recognized that our biggest challenge in an iOS application is it's extremely hard to raise as a B2C consumer application because the customer acquisition cost is so high. And we needed money to be able to afford the infrastructure and security required to be a sustainable application. And so we had to figure out what we were going to do. And transparently, the first half of 2019 was really challenging. We were running out of cash, and there wasn't really any sight of us being able to, reach specific goals. But kind of in between our first launch coming into that point, we were doing whatever we can. We were super scrappy and trying to figure out how we could distribute the product as cost effectively as possible. So we started connecting with financial institutions, local banks, property managers, and essentially re-engineer the problem that caused us to start the idea in the first place. And essentially when they would have a rejected applicant, rather than them just walking away empty-handed like we did from View and Varsity and Landmark, we would essentially provide them a pamphlet or a landing page depending on where they applied, and then would show them essentially, the path that they would need to take in order to get approved through our own brand. So then one of the banks that we were working with really liked the idea, but it was a small community bank. They only had like 7 employees, no development, and all of their technology came from a financial service provider called FIS, which we had no idea about. It was so complicated. We were so confused, but essentially we had a meeting with them, and they brought in their FIS representative who mentioned that he had a lot of other clients that faced a very similar issue of spending a massive amount of money on trying to acquire customers and spending a lot of their marketing budget on rejecting applicants. So he was like, maybe we can try and see if this might be a white label opportunity. He introduced this to their innovation team, and FIS ended up becoming a strategic investor. They only did a small $75,000 check on a safe note that actually followed the terms of our family and friend round. So we kind of just ended up extending that round into doing a $600,000 pre-seed round. And what they ended up doing was enabling us to discover what an enterprise pivot would look like. So they brought us down to Little Rock, Arkansas, and they have a program. It's not necessarily an accelerator, but all of the startups that they invest in, essentially they let you live in Little Rock for 3 months, and they bring in dozens of banks. So in 3 months, we spoke to 83 banks, and we pulled our lean startup that we had learned in the Dingman Center, and really just focused, instead of trying to sell them anything, it was entirely focused on customer discovery. We were learning, I don't know if you have been recommended the book, Talking to Humans. We reread that book when we were entering this kind of new phase and trying to understand what a pivot would look like, and just to really understand the problems associated with what, enterprises and lenders face. And ended up deciding through that program, as well as participating in Techstars around the same time, that we would pivot to an enterprise model. So we took the consumer application off of the iOS App Store and off of the web, the internet, and ended up moving entirely to enterprise. So we basically took that end user solution that we had for consumers and are now white labeling it for financial institutions as a lead recovery platform. So rather than them just rejecting applicants, we create an extended approval option for them. So essentially, rather than saying no, you can say yes, but not right now. And then our system will reverse engineer their eligibility requirements to show them the exact steps that they need to take in order to get approved in the quickest amount of time possible. So when we made that enterprise pivot, and also leveraging the accelerator networks that we had been in previously, we were able to close our pre-seed round, which there was a ton of learnings from that, but that gave us runway until the end of 2020. So we weren't expecting to raise. In the time of speaking, I think for that round, we had spoken to, I think it was like 140 some investors. And we had a 7% conversion of people that committed to investing in the round. So one of the things that I'll mention later is we ended up getting, and it's very common to get a ton of no's, but we knew we needed the capital and we weren't going to give up on what we were doing. And so we closed that $600,000 round, didn't expect to raise for another year. But one of the investors that wanted to invest in the round, but the size was too small for them, asked us if we would be interested in preempting a seed round. So at first we said no, and this is kind of coming into 2020 earlier this year. At first we said no because we didn't want to raise more money than we needed. And the person that actually gave us that advice was Michael Pratt. So we actually ended up calling him and having like a 2-hour-long phone conversation with him, just trying to break down the pros and cons of raising a large round. And after that conversation, we were really kind of like, all right, there's a good opportunity for here. Someone's offering us a market term sheet and we can push up the valuation. And so we ended up deciding to go forward with the seed round. In terms of just fortuitous timing, we ended up getting our term sheet for that round about a week before the world melted and the US cut off Europe and everything just went to crap. And so we ended up, we were like not sure if we were going to move forward and raise a round or if we were going to put it on ice. But one of the things that we learned was how important it is to be particular about your investors. Our investor was very confident. They were like, this is the perfect time for you guys to be raising. You know, there might be a change in the valuation based on what the market is saying, but you know, we're going to move forward with the terms and look towards getting this secured in a 4 to 6 week period. And so I'm glad we took that advice because through leveraging our network and their network, we were able to close the $3 million seed round on May 7th. So since then, we've been focused on launching with partners and growing our team. But that's a bit of a kind of extended timeline in terms of how we ended up raising $3.6 million from the idea that was started in Dingman. Any questions so far? That's probably a lot of information. Cool. I'll go ahead and continue. So here's some pictures of us in Maryland. And some of these I have my ears pierced. I don't have my ears pierced anymore. But we, again, we're fortunate enough to participate in Pitch Dingman. And this was actually, I was really excited about this. This was when Terp Startup started. And this was our first office space. I forget what room in Van Munching this was, but like this is where we spent a ton of time that summer and ended up being late to a lot of our Terp Startup events. We work essentially like in that time period prior to Pitch Dingman, and we weren't really going to classes. We basically lived in the Hinman CEO office. We literally had sleeping bags, and like on weekends we would end up like being there until like 2 or 3 in the morning and just like end up like crashing or taking a nap there. So we got a lot of our development done in helping us understand what we were doing, and also development work on the initial beta platform that launched in 2018. Here's us in the bullpen pitching to former Dingman employee Adam Van Wagner. And then this is us at Pitch Dingman. So here's a question that I have for everyone. And I'm not sure if you can do polls on Zoom, so I guess we won't. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you know about fundraising? I'd love to know, and I'll go ahead and just call on someone. Joseph, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but how much would you say that you know about fundraising?
About fundraising, I'd say about a 2.5 out of 10. The only experience I have is Shark Tank and my dad talking to me. So that's all about how much I know.
Got it. No, and the one thing that I'll say, we actually applied to be on Shark Tank, and we recognized throughout the process, we got to the final round, and it's a very different fundraising experience because they want it to be very theatrical. But yeah, I definitely. It's a unique fundraising experience. And then in terms of your dad, has your dad fundraised before, or is it just
he's a past entrepreneur, and he gives myself and my team a lot of nuanced advice. Some we use and some we don't, but yeah.
Got it. Yeah, no, it's funny because for us, we like learned a lot of stuff, and I'm hoping that this won't be the case. We like learned a lot of stuff that we ended up having to like relearn by like making mistakes when we ended up wanting to fundraise. But it is a lot of like nuanced stuff. It in itself is just this completely different beast. But that's good that you have at least some preliminary like knowledge. Do you have any intentions of fundraising either for this company or in the future, maybe?
Yeah, in terms of fundraising, as a team, we've sort of decided that we don't want to give up equity for now. So we're looking for grants such as, Terp Startup. And then we also received the Jamie and Jason Cohen Entrepreneurship Fund Award this year, which
Nice.
was also
Congrats.
helpful. So
Oh,
just in terms of fundraising, anything that doesn't come with giving up equity is what we look for.
absolutely. And like the best way to fundraise is through customers. Like the best way to
Yeah,
fundraise is
right. Exactly.
make
Yeah.
money in revenue because it's non-dilutive capital. Grants are also a great option as well. So congrats on those. And they help you get to a point. And what we learned about fundraising, just to tell off that, is you definitely want to fundraise when you need to fundraise, but also you want to do it before you're like running out of runway and you're about to have to close shop. But if you can, if you can secure grants and extend that runway, then I highly recommend it. Great, thanks for answering that. I'm gonna pick on someone else. Dwayne, do you have an answer for this as well?
I don't know much about fundraising, but like I'm on the same level with Mod Bars. I'm not planning on doing any fundraising that involves giving up equity. I also just launched like 3 months ago, but I don't see myself wanting to let go of any bit of my company. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally understand that. And that's definitely something to like keep in consideration when fundraising. It's just like, how much of this are you willing to give up? The one thing that I'll say, and not trying to advocate for fundraising, is there's also a ton of value add when you bring an investor on, especially if the investor is a strategic investor that might be connected in distribution channels for you. But that's something that comes, when you've had like, when you feel like you need it. So I'm glad that everyone here so far is being conservative about the ownership, because I think that especially when you're getting off of the ground, it's like the best thing to be doing. Cool. And I'll pick on one more person. Caroline?
Hi. Yeah, I'm kind of the same with Sarah and like my level of like knowledge on fundraising is like a 2-ish. I've also just like trying to keep all equity and just doing grants like through Pitch Dingman and then Terp Startup and Ladies First Founder. So those are just kind of like what I've been doing. But yeah.
Awesome. No, there's a ton. I don't know if there was a resource that we had that kind of explained all of the like funding or grant opportunities, but in UMD there's so many. Like Hinman, we were able to get, I think it was a $3,000 grant. And then obviously Dingman has various types of grant opportunities. So no, I'm glad that everyone here is at least familiar with the grants, and I would take advantage of those. And then Josh, you mentioned that you were also looking at crowdfunding, right? Is that like a fundraising source that you've had experience with?
Yeah, actually, yeah, thanks for asking. So my co-founder, Patrick, he went to UMD, graduated right before I did, and he has done a crowdfunding campaign on his previous startup. He had like a phone accessory startup. It was one of those like ring things that connect to the back of your phone case, and sold like a few thousand units on Kickstarter. But obviously it's like $5, $10, $15 a piece, and you don't get much, money off each sale. So he kind of does it like as like a background thing, but he's definitely done A/B testing and ad campaigns and things of that nature. So we're basically planning on doing a crowdfunding in September of this year, actually. So in a couple months.
Awesome.
We're targeting around 150 to 250K in sales. And the way we're kind of doing that is by lining up pre-sales before we launch. We actually also just hired a marketing partner that does Kickstarter campaigns and drone products and 360 camera products. And they're really, really good. They just did 4 different companies and raised over $1 million this year. So hopefully we can break like $500,000, 250K. I think that's like a reasonable, like, estimate. Maybe, if things work out really well and the stars align, we could do $1 million. But after that, we're planning on doing that as kind of a way to get traction and to get credibility in terms of investors. So angel investors have been like, kind of hit or miss with like helping us out previously, because it's no really sales and like, it's hard to get stuff without traction. So really after the Kickstarter, we're going to be in a position where we can kind of target higher level angels. And the goal, so this is kind of what I was going to ask you about. So for our seed round, I'm kind of trying to land like a big name investor to like lead the round. So I have a soft intro to someone at Andreessen. I have someone at Sequoia that I'm looking to kind of land. I feel like if we can get like a big name person on at the start of our seed round, then we're basically fine to get investors as long as our company is doing well. So that's kind of the play there.
Awesome. No, there's and we can connect offline if there's any like introductions that I can make to help kind of expedite that process. Like, please let me know. But in terms of and something that I'll go through on here, fundraising is a lot of FOMO. Like a lot of like investors, it's very funny how like much of a psychological game it is. And if you can get a big name investor, and whether they're leading or just like following on and someone else is setting the terms, you'll end up closing much faster because people are like, oh, Andreessen's in, or oh, Sequoia's in. And that like credibility, there's something that I'll also talk about later, which is like mitigating risk. They feel like the like large names that have a pretty strong portfolio are able to kind of mitigate a little bit of the risk that they're trying to. So yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, let me know kind of offline how I can be helpful with that.
Awesome. Yeah. Another quick thing about accelerators, we're gonna right after the crowdfunding campaign, we're also gonna like apply. So we applied to Techstars like a bunch of time and just like haven't even got into like the interview phase. And I think it's because we haven't we're selling a hardware product and we have no actual sales when companies are out here doing $1 million on Kickstarter or whatever. So I think that kind of makes sense why we haven't been getting any like real traction with the higher level big name accelerators. But with Y Combinator, actually, we did get some like positive feedback from our application there. So I think we're going to try to target YC after the campaign, and obviously Techstars and every other accelerator, just be like, hey guys, we just did X on Kickstarter, give us money. So that's it.
Yeah, Techstars was like, not to sound over dramatic, Techstars was definitely one of the most like transformative experiences I've ever had, like in the timeline of the company. It was phenomenal. And I highly recommend. I have a lot of friends that went through YC and also said it as like an extremely like valuable experience. The one value add, YC is really good if you're looking to raise like future rounds, like Series A, Series B. Techstars has very like niche programs. So like, there's like an Amazon one that might be good for a drone company, or like they have like so many like different corporate sponsors that are pretty involved. But yeah, we applied to Techstars 3 times before getting in. We applied to Y Combinator 3 times and never got an interview. So a lot of that is like finding the right MDs and finding the right program for you. And also one thing I'll mention is traction will help you, but they're so focused on, and a lot of accelerators, especially like brand name accelerators, aren't focused on traction as much as they are focused on the founders. Techstars is really like that. There were 2 companies in our program that had basically conceived the idea like weeks before they submitted the application. So literally no traction, nothing, but they got funded by Techstars based on the merit of like the founders. So that's just something that I would consider to just take in mind. I think that applying and just being like super transparent with Techstars is like what was the, what enabled us to get in, is just kind of laying it out on the table, because they want to find founders that they can work with that are going to be agile and are willing to pivot if they need to.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's good feedback. I think for moving forward with our applications post-launch, I think we're definitely going to try to position our team as being able to deliver on this campaign, on this Kickstarter product, and kind of focus more on the fact that our team together as a group was able to do X amount of sales, and this team is going to be able to deliver the products and move forward because of, mobile app development experience. I was the president at UMD. Patrick has done Kickstarters in the past, and we have some grad students doing robotics and aerospace engineering on the team. So I think as long as we're like kind of focused on how our team will be able to deliver products, I think we'll be in a good spot to be accepted.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely recommend just like doubling down on team. Like I think it's on their website, like their first 3 investment criteria is team. And then they focus on like problem and market size. So yeah, if you can just like build a strong story and frame like why your team is the all-star team that's going to solve the problem and inevitably have the large exit, then they'll likely like bring you in. Just my recommendation there, which is also a good question for anyone else. I know you guys are all in an accelerator right now, but does anyone in our group or in our chat have any intentions of doing any accelerators like post this one? Is there any accelerators that have kind of stood out for businesses? I know that there are different accelerators for different niches, like Techstars is pretty tech focused, but there are some like really awesome like food accelerators and things like that. So has anyone looked into potentially going into an accelerator, a non-school sponsored accelerator?
Yeah. So we got into F3 Tech's accelerator at the end of the year, which focuses in on food and farming and things like that. And then we're also thinking about applying to Bethesda Greens, which is another accelerator. And I've reached out to them, and the person who runs it, Patty, is very excited, and she has high hopes. She says she has to go through the process still, but it seems like an inevitable result.
Awesome. Is there anyone else? I saw someone else with their hand raised as well. Camilla?
Yeah, we're so trying to build a drone delivery company is very capital intensive, and it also requires like manufacturing facilities and resources and stuff. Like we've been working on prototypes all summer, and it's gone slowly, and it's been difficult because like we haven't had access to any campus resources. So we're definitely looking to apply to like accelerators, and more specifically like hardware accelerators. So yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely for like any of the tech companies here, definitely consider Techstars. Like Sphero is like one of their like baby, like their all-star companies, and they did it like a hardware company. They came in with like almost nothing and like pivoted during the program. And I think like a month or two after the program got a contract with Disney to do like the C-3PO or the updated Star Wars sphere. And so they're really good at just like finding the right resources. But accelerators are phenomenal. We learned a lot in our time during Terp Startup, and then we took what we learned in there and basically did a handful of other programs that were crucial to our better understanding the business, but then also something that's going to be really valuable both towards business development and fundraising, if that's ever in the plans, is going to be network. And as students, we're kind of capped in the network that we can acquire based on geographical constraints, and also it's all based on who's kind of willing to participate in different programs that the school offers. So accelerators are a really good way to accelerate your network building. That again would be relevant. It helped us in fundraising, but more specifically is business development. So definitely recommended accelerators. And again, if anyone has any questions on like maximizing accelerator experiences, don't hesitate to ask a question now or reach out after the presentation. Cool. So I'm going to quickly move forward. That was great. Into some lessons. I know we're coming on in 15 minutes, so I'll try and kind of make these quick. But the first one that I'll say is you're always fundraising, including right now. And so this is something that you'll hear a lot from people that have fundraised before. I didn't realize how much of the story that we used to raise money revolved around what we were doing while we were in school. I mean, almost all of it. And I think that that's the one thing, which is the second bullet, which is building resume. Basically, if you are looking or considering to fundraise in the future, all of the actions that you're taking right now, both in order to like obtain traction, obtain revenue, or even as simple as setting assumptions and then doing customer research to either validate or invalidate those assumptions, will be relevant towards when you go out and start fundraising. And then more importantly, or just as importantly, is the relationships. Prior to raising a growth round, which is basically, when you start looking at private equity and things like that, that are just taking a look at Excel sheets and saying like, all right, so if we inject this much capital, we're going to get this much out. A lot of investments or in investing is relationship based. They are investing in you more than they're investing in the idea. Obviously the idea is important, but they really want to make sure that you're not just going to take their money and run. Or more specifically, if you are going to take the money, you're going to take it and make something out of it. They want to see a return. And so a lot of that is proving, why you're the team to do that. And what I noticed about our fundraising, especially as it came down towards leaving school, it was kind of how you were spending your time, after hours and on weekends that really set you apart in being able to make a founder successful ways or not. So right now, I would say if you are considering fundraising at any point in your life, something that I'd recommend for you to consider is just you are fundraising right now based on the fact that you are building relationships and building your resume. So I would, just keep that in mind if fundraising is something that you would ever consider. Any questions here before I move to the next lesson that we learned? Cool. fundraising is a full-time job, and I apologize if there's any spelling errors. Not the best at grammar. In terms of like the actual process of fundraising, it is intense. And I would say like it's more of an emotional resilient experience than it is like anything like business oriented, because you talk to so many people, you get so excited about so many opportunities, and realistically, like the inevitable fact is people generally have less than a 10% conversion rate for seed rounds. So you need to be talking to a lot of investors, very similar to if you're doing sales, you need to be talking to a lot of prospects, because not all of those prospects are going to convert. And so it takes a lot of your bandwidth, and it's challenging to focus on much else. And it also is something that takes a toll on your emotions as well. So taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health throughout the process is really important. And so that goes to the second bullet, which is having a team you can trust is really important. For our $3 million seed round, I would say that's the most challenging thing that I've had to do. And I ended up having to, I tried to kind of raise, which was not feasible in any way, shape, or form because of how demanding investors can be. And so I ended up having to pass all of my accounts and all of my product development roles over to my team and solely focus on fundraising. So that's just one thing that I would prepare you for if you ever do consider fundraising. Is it is a full-time job, and you'll likely end up having to take attention away from business development, sales, and growth. And so I recommend fundraising when you feel confident for your team to kind of take on the additional load by you focusing on working with investors. Any questions there before I move on? Nope. Okay, cool. The third one is persistence plus timing equals luck. And there's this quote that I love from Samuel Goldwyn that says, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." Like I said, you get a lot of no's. It's just the name of the game. You'll end up speaking to a lot. You'll cast your net wide, but investors are looking for specific things. They might have a specific vertical that they invest in. They might invest exclusively in, organic food products or in drone technology or mobile delivery, but you'll still end up getting a no based on certain factors that really fit into their thesis. And their thesis is extremely important. So one of the things that we had to do, we ended up burning out after our $600,000 rounder in between because we were getting so many no's, and we were like, this is just not going to pick up any traction. But what we had to reframe our mind was to celebrating those types of close, because what we ended up finding is a lot of investors like being investors a lot. They love being investors. And part of being an investor is talking to companies. And so what you'll notice will happen is you'll be talking to an investor that will show strong signals that they're going to invest, but really in the background, they really don't have any intentions on investing. It's pretty common. And so the one thing that you can do to mitigate that and save yourself time and energy is just make sure that your pipeline of investors is thick. But then also just recognize you might plan for a 4-week fundraise, and it's likely going to take double that. So persistence is really important. And then timing is also really important. So like I mentioned earlier, FOMO is a huge, huge part of raising money because they want to feel like they have a short window of when they can put money into this. And they also want to make sure that they don't miss out on the next Airbnb, the next Uber. And so basically leveraging, right timing and momentum to raise is important. And you'll hear this phrase a lot, which is you want to be the hottest in the room by leveraging kind of the timing. And right now, it seems like a lot of the businesses that I heard coincide well with the current time of COVID. And so not that I know many of you are raising, but like there's a timing aspect to like how COVID is going to impact your business, and it could impact it positively where that might actually end up working in your favor from a raising perspective. A lot of funds have switched their thesis temporarily over the next year or two to focus on businesses that are positively impacted in COVID and funding them. So timing is really important. And then also where you're at in your round is also going to be really important. This could potentially be a little bit technical. So if I said anything that confuses you, please let me know. But is there any questions here on persistence and timing? Okay. One thing that we noticed probably too late, which is investors are upside seekers and not risk takers. It's funny because you would imagine investors to be risk takers, but realistically they're betting on risk takers as opposed to being risk takers. Depending on who you're getting investments from, it seems like angels are kind of common in this group, which is we raised from a bunch of angels for our seed round or our pre-seed round, and they're most likely raising from their own personal capital. So in terms of them deploying that capital, they'll likely have probably not a well built out thesis, but a thesis of who they're looking to fund. And what we noticed from the investors that we got on the angel side is a lot of time they're really focused on the financial model because they want to know how their money is being used and where their money is going to go and how they're going to get that return. But that's like the one thing that I would take into consideration is their money is coming directly from them. So the time to close is a bit sooner because you don't need to worry about them having to go and talk to their investment counsel or limited partners. Then on the other side, if you're raising from institutional capital, from VCs, just recognize that you might have a partner that's like, I'm gung-ho for this. Like, I want my bar, like this needs to happen. But you have to recognize that they have to sell that to their investment counsel and then justify a return to their LPs because they're not investing their own money. They're basically taking money from high net worth individual, private equity, and funds of funds that are creating these, $5 to $50 to $100 million funds that they're deploying capital out of. And so basically, you might be working with an investor that really likes you and that has the ability to invest, but they also have to sell this to their team. So I think that's one thing that I'll also kind of add brownie points to the building of relationships. They're more likely to push for you internally, even if they're getting friction, if you have a good relationship with them. And the last thing that I'll say is mitigating risks. If you are considering raising money now or in the future, do whatever you can to de-risk your company. That means to try and validate or invalidate as many hypotheses as you can, or get as much traction as you can before opening the round. So a lot of what Josh had said was like right in line with like what I would recommend, like doing what you can to get the numbers up and being able to frame the story really well of how this can grow. And one of the things that we were able to raise on prior to having much traction was just the assumptions that we invalidated. We had a list of assumptions that we made as a consumer application while we were in school, while we were out of school, and basically how all of those assumptions that we made were false. And that was enough for people to understand the validation and the direction that we were aiming for. Now, we still, like on a quarterly basis, are invalidating a ton of our assumptions, but the more assumptions that you can either validate or invalidate through customer research or user interface or market traction is going to help you raise in the future. Any questions here? Look at my time real quick. Great, about 5 minutes, I'm almost done. The one thing that we noticed is options to raise capital as students are limited. So one of the things that was challenging for us and a contributing factor to us leaving school early was a lot of institutional investors want the founders to be completely committed to solving the problem and will not invest if the founder's not full-time. Now, there are exceptions there, and a lot of times if you are able to tap into local angel networks, they won't have that strict of a policy. But again, as it comes down towards them not being risk takers, it's more of a risk for them if you are not fully committed. So that's just one thing to consider for institutional capitals, but that doesn't mean that there isn't capital available. A lot of you had mentioned grants, competitions. Pitch Dingman was great in order for us to get some preliminary capital to build our initial beta tests. Family and friends are great as well. If you have people in your network that can contribute, even if it's anywhere just like, $1 to $5,000 to $10,000. As startups, we're scrappy. We're not spending a ton of money, so that should take you a while. And there are also some student-focused funds that are worth looking into. So like 301 Ventures. I'm not sure if they're still deploying capital, but I know that they had some money that they were deploying. And then Dorm Room Fund is a big one. So if you are looking for institutional capital that can provide resources outside of capital, then I would take a look at student-focused funds. And the last one is accelerators. So we talked about that previously. Accelerators are awesome. No matter how many companies I start, I will always look towards doing accelerators because it's a ton of fun. Starting a company is a huge uphill battle. There's a lot of things that we deal with. It's pretty lonely. And doing it in an accelerator, you guys can rely on each other and kind of empathize with the challenges that you have. So there's a huge benefit of accelerators outside of just being able to tap into their immediate funding and funding resources. Any questions here? Cool. And then I guess the key takeaways that I had from this is be persistent and stay committed and don't stop learning. A lot of even in our last round, focusing on, just learning from investors and learning from what the investors were saying that were preventing them from investing. It was a painful exercise because you basically are just getting, your business torn apart time after time, but the amount that you learn about A, how investors think, but also B, how your business can be better is really important. So even if you're not successful in getting a ton of no's, there's still an opportunity to learn from their perspective as to why they're not feeling that that could be venture backed. Two, even if you're not fundraising, you're still fundraising. Look, like you might not look or think about fundraising for this company, but you might end up being in a company in the future that might be a little bit more capital intensive and need fundraising. So even everything that you're doing at this company is going to be relevant towards building that resume. So I wouldn't do it for the sake of fundraising, but just consider you're building your network and you're building your resume right now. That's going to be relevant towards when you do fundraise. And the last thing that I'll say is do whatever you can to mitigate risks. I mean, I know you guys are all working your butts off to, see what you're building, take off and scale. And whatever you can do to mitigate the risks for yourself and possible investors in the future will help you definitely secure the rounds that you need in order to take your company to the next stage. So here, I put my email there. It's ab@curucredit.com. I'm also on Twitter and LinkedIn at ab-kapoor. Would love to connect with all of you, and my email is open 24/7. If anyone has any questions as it comes down towards fundraising or anything else that I could possibly be helpful with.
Wait, could you keep that contact slide up? I was going to write that down.
Sorry about that. Yeah. And I can also share this with the team in case, but sorry about that.
No, I'm just going to take a picture of my phone. Cool, thanks.
Cool. So that was it. And I appreciate you all taking the time. It's great to reconnect with the Dingman Center and Terp Startup. And congrats to all of you, A, for getting in, but also B, for what you're doing. It's definitely a challenging road, but it's extremely fulfilling. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much for making the time to come in and talk with us, Ab. I know we're like right at the end of our time, so I don't know if someone has one quick question. Do you have any advice on how you find relevant accelerators or investors for you, other than networking?
Yeah, absolutely. There's this awesome website called F6S. It's literally, I don't know if you have heard of it. It's literally F6S, and I think it's .com. Sorry if it's not .com, but it has a list. Basically, all accelerators are on there to some degree, and you can generally fill out applications for those accelerators directly through that platform. And it's really easy. If you're in food or if you're in fashion, you can really just tag and see what relevant accelerators are for each one of those different niches. But F6S is wonderful.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and another tactic that we did is I would go to your relevant competitors or people that are similar and see if they had done any accelerators. Or what investors that they've had, because generally they'll put it on their website or you can find a press release on it. That's how we found one of the programs that we ended up applying for. That was really helpful. So I take a look at what the market's doing and seeing kind of what programs have been successful there.
Great. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. Really appreciate you making the time today.
Of course. No, thank you guys all so much for the time. And again, best of luck. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of your pitches at Demo Day.
So good to see you, Ab. Thank you.
So good to see you as well, Sarah. See you guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.